All right. Welcome everybody to IGTV, the Infragard Editorial with William H. Murray, and we're going to be talking about RFID. So, Bill, go ahead, take it away. You've got my interest peaked here.
In 2003, Walmart announced that it was going to contract with its principal suppliers to affix RFID tags to products to assist in logistics control. While the initial plan was to replace optical tags on pallets and containers, they talked about tagging individual units, for example garments, so that they could keep track of sizes on the floor. Other big purchasers like the U.S. Air Force, another leader in logistics, endorsed the idea. Industry watchers predicted a revolution. The resistance was immediate and fierce. With the possible exception of bioengineering, few technologies have generated as much angst as RFID. The tinfoil hat brigade was out in force. The privacy advocates viewed it with alarm and used fear of it to organize and to raise funds. Legislators proposed regulations. Those who did not write guidelines for its use endorsed those written by others. The problem seems to be that observers project all capabilities, motives, and potentials on all implementations and applications. For example, they seem to think that everything and everybody will be tagged. All tags will be too small and obscure to be seen by the consumer and difficult to remove. Readers will be ubiquitous and covert. They will be able to read everything and at any distance. Tokens will be cloned, personal data will leak, and tags will spread viruses. The technology will be used for all kinds of antisocial applications like passports, pornography, employee monitoring, spreading of viruses, and tracking of children. On May 25th, CNET reported that schools in Texas are putting RFID chips in student IDs. Big Brother, Big Data, and Big Business will use RFID to monitor and exploit our every purchase and movement. As the technology scales and falls in price, we will use it for applications that could hardly have been predicted in 2003. In the intervening 9 years, all of these technological nightmares have come true in spades. How one feels about it depends in part upon whether one calls it by an esoteric name, like RFID, or by its more familiar name, the iPhone. All of this came to mind this month at the New York Infragard Security Summit on Organized Retail Crime, ORC. All kinds of problems were presented that dealt with the granularity of control of product from the source to the consumer. For example, it seems that the key player in ORC, as opposed to consumer shoplifting, is the fence. It's easier to identify a fence than to prove that his inventory is stolen or from whom. As I listened, my mind kept returning to product identification in general and RFID in particular. When late in the day I asked about why RFID was not used to address the problems, the retail security people informed me that they had looked at it years ago and had rejected it as too expensive. I could not help but wonder how expensive is organized retail crime. What is RFID anyway? Well, it's an acronym for Radio Frequency Identification Device, or devices. However, the reality is that this acronym is applied to a huge collection of loosely related technologies and applications. They are related in that they all involve the use of radio waves to read a token, tag, or label. While they are called the same thing, they differ materially in application or use, cost, reliability, and distance. They include passive tags that cost pennies and can be read at distances of centimeters, up to active battery-powered transponders costing tens of dollars, but that can be read at tens of meters or even at kilometers. RFID devices have a number of security applications, features, functions, and properties. However, as Courtney's first law reminds us, nothing useful can be said about RFID security except in the context of a specific application and environment. And like any other technology, RFID can be abused and misused. The use of RFID to track students in Texas makes an interesting example. The commentators seem certain that there is something at least suspicious, if not downright evil, about this application, but they cannot quite identify what it is. Many of the applications for RFID are similar to those that are already done optically with Universal Product Code barcodes, QR codes, mag stripe, magnetic ink, and scanners. For example, railroad cars are marked with barcodes, and these are read as the car passes scanners. Groceries and other hard goods are labeled with the Universal Product Code, that is the UPC barcode. These were originally read only by checkout counters, checkout scanners, but today they can be read and decoded by iPhones. By the end of 2012, many handheld computers will be capable of reading some RF tags. Like these other tags, in most applications, an RFID tag will not carry descriptive information, but rather a unique number or a code that points to the descriptive information. For example, until recently, the consumer could not decode UPCs. She did not have access to the necessary database. Now, multiple copies of the necessary databases are online. Not only can she decode it in real time, she can find competitive sources and prices in real time. Anybody else besides me notice that in Costco they use proprietary codes and that they are not online? Joe pointed out to the fact that for reasons that are still somewhat obscure, some issuers of credit cards began to affix RFID tags to the credit cards. This was a vulnerability, not much of a problem, but it was a vulnerability in part because they didn't use a token or substitute number. They actually put the credit card number on the RFID card. Perhaps my favorite all-time RFID application is EasyPass. If you don't live in the Northeast, you can hardly appreciate how great this application is. Using a battery-powered token the size of a deck of cards, one can drive from Maine to Virginia without stopping to pay a toll. While one used to have to at least slow down, in many locations, the token is now read at highway speeds. The token listens passively. When challenged, turns itself on and broadcasts its unique identity. This identity is associated with the class of vehicle, the name and address of the driver, a credit balance, and optionally, but usually, a credit card or bank account number for refreshing the balance. The benefits have been enormous. Billions of man-hours and billions of gallons of fuel have been saved. There is now an entire generation that has never seen a backup at a toll plaza. Toll collections have gone up and the cost of collection has gone down. The amount of the toll that used to be a sensitive political issue has now fallen beneath the level of notice of all but the meanest commuters. What's not to like? Well, the tinfoil hat brigade will tell you that the token can be read by others than the toll collectors and might be used to track a traveler. While difficult and expensive, this is literally true. They caution that the toll collectors may misuse and abuse the data that they collect. For example, in order to demonstrate to the driver that they are charging him for only trips that he actually made, the toll collector records and reports to him every collection point that he passed, along with the time and date. Incidentally, we call this a compensating control. Is this information vulnerable to abuse? Yes, in fact, it's so vulnerable that it invites abuse. Is it happening? Probably, but we do not know. Is it extensive? Probably not, or we would know. We would hope that the toll authorities would require warrants or at least subpoenas so as to maintain accountability for their acts. In any case, such abuse or misuse is of the application and its data. While the data might not exist were it not for the technology, it is the data, not the technology itself, that's being exploited. While there may be a limited number of applications that can be done with RFID that cannot be done with competing technologies, many of the likely applications are already being done with other kinds of tags that, while they can only be read optically, are often still read automatically. For the most part, RFID is preferred for speed, accuracy, distance, and convenience, flexibility, transparency, and particularly granularity. For example, while the optical tags are adequate for carloads, containers, and pallets, they're not sufficiently transparent or granular to identify individual items like garments or medicine packages. RFID has the potential to permit us to know what kinds of goods are in a car, container, or pallet, but also that the expected number of units are there. If affixed at the source, an RFID tag might permit us to know the garment size and color. RFID might permit the merchant to know not only the merchandise put into inventory, the number paid for by customers, but the number actually still on the floor. It might enable investigators to locate and identify stolen property in the hands of a fence. RFID costs are falling with increased use and the general cost of electronics. Tags that can currently be printed for 15 cents may be printed for a penny in months to years. Scanners will move from dedicated devices to features on other devices, like smartphones. As those costs fall, the technology will be efficient for an increasing number of applications. Security professionals should be alert to the opportunities presented by expanding capabilities and falling costs. They should revisit applications that they may have rejected in the past. As law enforcement and security professionals, we have a vested interest in this technology. Most applications will be some combination of logistics and security. They will help us resist, investigate, and prosecute crime. In order to ensure that we can rely upon the applications and to make them resistant to abuse or misuse, we will participate in the selection and application of the technology. In part for our knowledge and use of technology in general, and RFID in particular, will we be known as professionals and be paid the big bucks. See you next week.
Yeah, great discussion on RFID, and boy, you also, crisscrossed a number of different things there, showing how the application has really come to help in society. The whole example of the toll booth, for instance, the truth of the matter is we have saved billions of dollars, right, at that toll booth.
Absolutely. That's got to be the greatest application of all time.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And when you talk about highway emissions and things of that nature, the cars going through, and rather than having them laying up and waiting 15, 20 minutes a car to get through to the toll booths, you also, improve the environment as well. So great examples as usual. Anybody who's not hearing these editorials is missing a gift.